Hey everybody, this video is a little bit different to usual. It's more like a podcast. It goes on for over an hour. So get comfortable, do whatever you normally do when you listen to podcasts. If you need it to be uploaded somewhere else, then just let me know in the comments. I fully expect to upload it to like a podcast site once I figure out what you guys want. So Sin the Fields is an Alter World podcast. I think it's like the biggest Ultimate podcast. And for good reason. It's hilarious. You got Pat and Tad hosting it, bringing people on, talking about all kinds of things Ultimate related, and keeping it light and humorous with lots of like references and stuff. So it's a top quality podcast. And they had an episode recently where they were just talking about hexagon offense and a bit of flex and getting all kinds of different perspectives on it. Then they invited me onto the show and had an interview with me a few weeks after that Hex episode. So this video is a couple of clips from the first episode where they're all talking about Hex and talking to other people about Hex. That episode in full is available on Ultiworld. I'll put the link in the description actually, so you don't need to search. And then the interview, which came afterwards, this video contains that like in full with my like reactions and additions, because I was trying to keep my answers quite short on the show, and I had more to say, so I added more bits in. Then at the end, I had a chat with them, and there's a little excerpt from that where I kind of explain my passion, like where it comes from, what my motivation is for pushing Hex and Flex for the last few years, the last decade now, pretty much. So, yeah, like I say, get comfortable. First up, if you don't, head over to the description and check out the thing in full. We've got a few clips from that first episode. So first up, it's Brian Kibbler with a very American view on Hex.
Something called the hexagon offense has entered the ultimate zeitgeist, popularized on Felix Shardlow's YouTube channel and gaining further traction in an article by Valerio Ianni published by Ultiworld in the end of January. Now, I haven't watched a Felix video in its entirety, because if I wanted to experience 2 hours of someone abusing the pause button while talking over the interesting parts, I would just rent Tenet with my dad. And I only read about 3/4 of Valerio's article because of my character flaws. But the Hex offense is clearly destined to fail, like the USSR, East Germany, and the rest of the communist states that I'm pretty sure also failed because it's un-American horse shit. First of all, Shardlow and Valerio are both from Europe, so strike one. Second, Shardlow and Valerio describe the Hex offense as an egalitarian system that does away with traditional, isolation-based stack offense and distributes the disc quickly and evenly between players. In the Hex, you take whatever throw the defense gives, which makes getting separation as easy as cashing a government assistance check. Sounds great, right? Wrong. The last time I signed a club waiver, it was on the USA Ultimate website. And in the USA, we value the rugged individualism of a cutter isolated and avert stack. There is virtue in picking up your lunch pail, challenging your defender, and earning separation with as many juke moves as the job requires. We choose to isolate not because it is easy, but because it is hard. Shardlow and Valerio claim that in the Hex, sequences of uncontested passes prevent defenders from locking in. This creates effortless breakthrough opportunities. Well, I grew up in a part of the country where we blasted through mountains with dynamite because that's where we wanted to put train tracks. Do you think I'm afraid to use 9 seconds and 6 pump fakes to break a flick force? Another core tenet of the hexagon offense is negative space. Negative space refers to intentional backward passes to redirect the flow. While I am greatly in favor of using super dumps to fuck with inept college players in an alumni game, utilizing them as a genuine competitive strategy is cowardice of the highest level. Whatever happened to manifest destiny? This country was literally founded on the idea of striding forward regardless of the dangers that lie ahead or the people already living there. Poach defenders in this metaphor. If Lewis and Clark had moved backwards, they would have ended up in Trenton, New Jersey, and eventually the Atlantic Ocean, both of which had already been discovered. I don't know how to fit this into the larger critique, but Valerio unironically references Frank Huguenard's dribbling concept as an inspiration for the Hex offense. Frank just lost $15,000 worth of gold betting against Joe Biden's inauguration. He's also famous for claiming that he dominated a Ring of Fire practice at the age of 54 and saying Jimmy Mickle sucks. I didn't know how to segue into that, and I certainly don't know how to segue out of it. So I want you to go take a second and look up a diagram of the hex. It's just a fucked up host stack with a couple of cutters who are too lazy to clear out of the deep space. What I've described to you so far should make you angry. What I'm about to describe should make you afraid and disgusted. In Valerio's own words, the hex, quote, does away with traditional handler and cutter roles. This should be gravely concerning to anyone who values the American way of Ultimate. College freshmen need the stability of a traditional Ultimate upbringing. They should be taught how to throw and dump cut by an upperclassman handler, and how to clear space and make continuation cuts by an upperclassman cutter. It is the natural order of things. Also, we need to consider the slippery slope. If we're getting rid of the handler-cutter designation today, what's next? Zone offense with only poppers? A cup with 5 short deeps? We are inviting a moral decay into this country that will inevitably destroy our way of life. Valerio tries to establish Hex's bona fides in his article by bragging about third-place finishes in D3 Metro East Regionals and New Zealand Mixed Nationals. You know what we win in America using Vert Stack? Worlds. We blast up the four side regardless of the defense. We pump fake 5 times and then bomb at 80 yards. We married Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. You can pry the Vert Stack out of our cold, dead hands.
The defensive principles in Flexagon, I think, are really cool. The only thing that I don't like is it relies on all players to have a hive mind or to be so highly practiced that they can no longer work jobs. You know what I mean? It's like, in this situation, surround the stack. It's like, yeah, well, I would do that if I was able to quit my job and like unlearn everything I've ever learned.
I just find the sort of like the cult of the hex baffling to me. You know, just the idea that it's like, no, anyone can do this. It's just these principles. Like, look, we'll teach it to this college team, and like you should actively be doing this right now. Like there are people in this Reddit thread that are bragging about using it to beat Brown B. Like literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was uncanny. We were beating this B team. I can't believe how well it worked. The article mentions Stevens Tech, who that year finished 5th in Metro East D3 as this like, look, it works in America too. Let me tell you, as someone who spent a lot of time in Metro East D3, the 5th place team in what is almost always a one-bid Metro East D3 region is not your shining example. This is not your Oakland A's have won 20 straight games, going to win the AL West example here.
The thing is this. You know who'd be really good if they ran Hex? Revolver would be pretty good if they ran Hex.
Right.
Fury, man, they would be sweet at Hex. This is not reinventing the offense. This isn't the West Coast offense. Like what's old is new again. Like force middle's hot again. I don't know if this. I don't know if it's time to burn those playbooks yet.
We're not Cody Mills, all right? Cody Mills can probably actually tell you why Hex is a bad idea and he's not running it at Cal Poly Slow. For me, it's more just a gut thing. It's just but just saying like, look, if none of the space is valuable, we don't separate break space and open space. We don't make break space more valuable than another space. If none of the space is valuable, all of the space is valuable. Right. Like this sort of like existential postmodern.
So how many shares would you like to buy? Like it's that's the fucking linchpin of the whole pitch of.
At a basic level, the tenet of Hex is, so you want to fairly distribute the disc across 7 players who all couldn't make Garden State. Great.
Did I say that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. I know. I know that I said that, but I mean, it's
a perfect summation of it. Like, I would love to see Felix bring a team that plays Hex over from the UK and watch them lose to, like, I don't know, Big Wrench. I mean, again, we're ignorant on this, and we're just
trashing this thing we know nothing about, right?
Yeah. But I've decided that that's where I want to be on that line. I want to be on the anti-Hex line, I think.
Yeah,
it feels good. It feels right.
Yeah. I was not anti-Hex. I'm still probably not technically anti-Hex, but like, I'm certainly anti people getting hyped up about it and telling me my fucking business. Like, I'm going to be teaching this to kids in 20 years. Like, it's the fucking gospel. This is ridiculous. I'm.
That's the thing. I think you've more accurately conveyed what I'm feeling right now. So there was something that snapped in me when I saw the guy bragging about beating Brown B using the Hex.
Yeah, fuck off.
Totally sincerely.
Oh.
Just completely sincere.
Yeah, I mean,
just because there's a big part of me that wants to see that person just get crushed, you know? Like, let's say it was, Oklahoma State is like, hyping up one of their players for all region because of this sick game they had against Brown B.
it's ridiculous. Yeah, the measuring
you would dunk on that
stick
person.
is dumb.
Right. So that's where a lot of this is coming from, I think. And maybe European Ultimate is just a healthier, better environment where people can just be proud of themselves and support others for their achievements and come up with more creative ideas and stuff like this. And we're wrong. There's a good chance that we're just wrong. But I think I'm just too deep in it at this point to know any other way.
Joining us now on Sin the Fields, the godfather of Hex, the Bill Walsh of Hex.
Somebody who brought a new offense into American football.
Felix Shardlow. Felix, how you doing, man?
Hey, Tad. Good to be here. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. How would you intro yourself? Like, what's your, hey, I'm Felix, and here's my card about the Hex offense. How would you typically introduce yourself?
Maybe the Hex guy.
The Hex guy.
Okay, well, you know what? I don't want credit, but you can use Godfather of Hex if you want.
Well, to be honest, you say that, and there's another character that pops to mind of Godfather of certain strategic ideas,
Well, we'll get into that. But before we dive fully into the Hex and everything, we wanted to give you the chance here for all of our American listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with what you're doing right now from a media perspective or any of your background in the game. Just kind of catch us up. Give us the quick and dirty kind of roundup of what you're doing right now in Ultimate Media.
Well, today I launched a Hive Ultimate, which is kind of the evolution of Felix Ultimate, and it's connecting players and coaches around the world and producing lots of content.
That's great. And so what do you have on launch right now? What are your kind of launch offerings, and where do you see that headed?
Well, we're working together with Singapore Ultimate, and we're kind of open to working together with other teams as well, helping them, designing trainings, and they're running trials at the moment. So we've got like a team of people looking over the footage from like a Hive Ultimate philosophy kind of point of view to kind of help them build that team, design their trainings and things. So that's one of the things with the coaches and the teams. And then I've been producing a lot of content, and that's going to kind of ramp up as well.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of talk about the partnership with the Singaporean national teams?
See, I glossed over the content bit there. Like, he asked what the initial offerings were. And, we've got the Offensive Mistakes series coming out, which is, super interesting series. And we've got Pona Evo versus Rhino analysis coming out from Jason as well. But there's just too much to talk about. And I think the Singapore thing was maybe like, I've been doing it all day, so it's more like, talk about this, which I think was okay.
So what I'm envisioning is they're going to be running primarily Hex offense, and I guess maybe Flex defense is only appropriate against the Hex. I'm curious, like, this is, I guess, from a coaching standpoint and from someone who has an offense that they're trying to get caught on, is a great opportunity and like kind of a showcase and a way to experiment with that.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into the details of the exact strategy or how much they're taking on, in what way. At the same time, we've come to this like agreement whereby, the fact that we're working together is very much a public thing, and people know what that kind of implies, right? They kind of know the direction that's leading in. But as a coach, it's incredibly exciting opportunity. I feel like we're really harnessing like all of the technology and all of the people as well. The technology of like all the live video and the people who have contacted me over the last 10 years or so, saying that they're teaching Hex and Flex, and now we're kind of bringing all the minds together to help other teams.
A hive mind, if you will.
Exactly.
That, right? I'm curious, from your coaching background.
Yeah, he kind of nailed that, like with the hive mind thing. But he'd actually said hive mind in the previous podcast on it, when referring to like what the defenders need to do, what Flex defenders, they need to kind of have a hive mind so that they can all react like as a team. which I love the idea of. I think we should be aiming towards that, like 100% dynamic communication with each other on the field. Why put that ceiling on? I kind of I knew he'd referred to that, and we have the hive mind. Rudy, don't stand on the laptop, please. We have the hive mind in the hive, right? It is like a group of people. Rudy, not the laptop. He nailed it. He nailed it by that, and I kind of led him there.
And I'd say you're probably more known for your ideas on strategy and critiques of strategy, because that's what creates easily digestible internet content for the most part, right? You show a clip and you can see players moving around. But for you personally as a coach, how important do you think figuring out ideal strategy, whether it's the hex, whether it's something else, is just compared to getting people on whatever the page is on the same page, just drilling basic throwing skills, catching and all of that? Like, where do you think that balance lies, and how much of your energy gets devoted to all of this tactical stuff versus just, on a basic level, we have to be throwing and catching and cutting as well as we can?
It's a good question, right? It's quite it kind of goes over it again and again, and I think my mind kind of gets caught up thinking about the core strategy stuff and how much that then affected what I taught in terms of the fundamentals that I taught changed. But there's a point that I don't get around to. So we'll listen to the answer and then I'll get back to the question basically.
Well, the tactical strategical revolution in my mind took me a little bit by surprise. I felt that there was a different way of doing things. I was kind of looking for it, and then suddenly it formed a eureka moment. And from that moment, that's kind of filtered back down, so that then the very fundamentals that I'm teaching new players have changed, and the structure of the first few trainings have changed, and the way that I encourage people to learn the game has changed a lot since that eureka moment. And I coach university, right? So I have a wide range of players, no experience, lots of experience, coming into it just to make friends, coming into it because they want to get a gold medal around their neck,
Mm-hmm.
Teaching them every single year from the very beginning for the last, it's been 18 years I've been coaching at Sussex University. But when the fundamentals shifted, then it was very, very noticeable for all of the aspects of my coaching.
And that's the full answer I give, right?
Interesting.
Is it?
Yeah. But that doesn't answer the question, right? Because the question was how much does it matter, delving into the strategy stuff or just teaching the catching, throwing, running? And the answer is way more interesting, because the answer is the catching, throwing, running is paramount, and you don't want players to have to delve into strategy at all, right? As a coach, as a strategist, even not even a coach, as a strategist, I delved into Hex and Flex and tried to find what the ideal thing was and spent time on that. But as a player, you got to get on the same page as the other players. As a coach, you got to get on the same page as the team, right? So players need to be on the same page as each other. They also need to be working on their throwing, catching, and running. They're basic. Those are the basic fundamentals. Throw, catch, run. Yeah, throw and move. And the thing with which I was trying to get around to was that once you adopt Hex philosophy, then all your learning is the throw, catch, run. Applying Hex principles is relatively simple. It's just little guidelines of maintain your spacing and maintain the shape, and beyond that it is just throw, catch, run. And whilst training Hex, you get so much practice in fundamental throw, catch, run stuff. The difference is in vert and side stack, there's a lot of identifying where the space is, how to clear out hard, directions to clear out, and memorizing those things, getting that one, just beating those one-to-one kind of matchups in a kind of totally isolated bubble kind of situation, sprinting fast, timing your cut, putting an order in your cut, having some field awareness so when you're the one stepping in and making the cut in that active space. Whereas in Hex, it's far more fluid, just kind of everyone has the opportunity to make the moves whenever they want. And all that everybody is doing is applying those same principles, and just when they have the opportunity, they're running, they're catching, and they're throwing, and they're running. And so even if like you train Hex throughout the whole season, as we did with the Hawks, train Hex throughout the whole season, and then you learn all those throwing, catching, running skills like way quicker than you do training other offenses, because you don't have the distraction of strategy, right? The Hex is actually like simpler strategy, and players have to remember less than when the orders and stuff in vert and side stack and where they're set up depending on where the disc is, where the first look is, that kind of stuff. Once the principles have got down to Hex, then it is just practicing those throwing, catch and running, getting everyone on the same page. You don't need to think about the strategy. And that should be for the coach as well, right? The coach should just be like, I know this is supposed to look a bit different. I know that this is supposed to move faster. And that should be it. Like obviously the defense do things and you learn how to like adjust, but like, contracting the Hex or, like looking in different directions or whatever. But yeah, fundamentally, like it's a great question because, but the answer is seated in like he the misunderstanding he has maybe is that he thinks that that Hex and Flex are this kind of like complicated strategies, which will distract people from the basics and the fundamentals. But actually, there is simplification of the strategy, which allows people to focus on the fundamentals more. So yeah, you train Hex all year, and then you can then introduce a vert stack setup from like catching the pull, and have great success with it, because as soon as it breaks down, as soon as your set play doesn't score, you're then experts at throwing, catching, running, and creating opportunities for each other. And that's how Sussex team won nationals with a vert stack, right? Because it was like vert stack, 1 or 2 cuts, and then we haven't scored yet. Everyone knows how to just move with the disc. So I never really kind of got round to the answer of that one.
Is it easier to teach a new team, like beginners, the Hex offense, rather than ultimate veterans that have been inundated with their own ideas of what offense is supposed to look like?
It's a bit like an inverted bell curve. So totally new to the sport, very easy to teach, or like very experienced masters, then they get it as well. Mm-hmm. That middle range can go run into quite a few problems.
What very experienced?
I wish I'd said challenges. Again, like keeping the answer very, very short. The easiest group it is to teach Hex to is people that come from soccer and Flex as well and stuff like that. People that come from soccer or like any other field sport really that isn't American football, and a little bit American football as well. But yeah, come from another sport, especially one where you can move freely and pass freely. Then suddenly they just gel with Hex immediately. There's a player, Don Burnham, actually, who in his first year, I remember training indoors, and I started playing after a few weeks with the team at the trainings, and I was just give going with him, like we had a connection. I just knew what he was going to do, and he knew what I was going to do, kind of thing, without it being like leading people with the throws, but we just had that kind of connection. It was just obvious how we're going to work the disc up, and I was give going with this beginner, and then at the end of his second year, then he was handling on the Brighton team with me. I say handling. He was like one of the 2 main people touching the disc at the back. And yeah, we went up against Emo, and like initially, like I catch the ball pass to him, he like penetrates through, runs, gets it back, bam, bam, bam. He's only been playing like 2 years, and he's dominating in nationals. And it took like 4 points of him being influential in either assisting or scoring, or just penetrating through the offense, through the defense. For then Emo to actually like switch and mark up their best players against him, realizing that this was the new like disc mover, But yeah, he came from a football background, from soccer, and just immediately gelled with the Hex style.
Masters, have you had the opportunity to coach with this sort of a thing? Like, are there any players who you're like, oh, that is like a elite player who's able to pick it up right away and is sort of our like poster child for this?
No, I answered this question by going on and talking about like a tournament I played with Belgian Masters, where I probably should have, like, there aren't like that many like super experienced masters who I've coached, so therefore there aren't many that I know who know Hex and Flex, but there are a lot who have played in a style that's been similar to Hex and Flex, and they've applied principles that are the same as the Hex and Flex principles. And I kind of wish I'd answered this question with being like, well, like, I wouldn't say it's Hex and Flex specifically, but the style of play that I'm talking about is, the way that Dylan Freechild moves with the disc, and like Tyler Kinley, and more relevantly, and not like an experienced master, but Manuela Cardenas, right? Like, if anyone could be like the poster girl for this style of offense, then Manuela Cardenas is like absolutely like brilliant at dribbling, right? She dribbles all the time. And defense, it's a bit of a harder question because it's more like a team thing. Johnny Bansfield, very much so, but then he's very poachy, and like, if you don't have the team on board, it's hard to know how much someone's communicating, whether it's just individualistic moves. I could have talked about other players like Matsuno and stuff who were experienced in playing the same style, but I took the question to be like, what are your experiences with masters?
I joined a Belgian Masters team. I was invited to play for a Belgian Masters team in, I think, 2018. And I didn't know that I was being brought on for strategy stuff, but they were like, yeah, Felix, you're in charge of our strategy, so what are we going to do? And it was like 10 minutes before the first game. So,
well, let me get 7 discs out here on the field. Around.
Yeah.
Everybody huddle up.
Yeah. There's a water bottle. Get water bottles in too, please.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice to explain it with discs, actually, because they fit together nicely and makes them feel warm inside again.
Weird. I don't know whether they were aware of this or whatever, but when you're explaining Hex and you do it with discs, then they fit perfectly together, right? Because one circle in the middle gets surrounded perfectly by 6 other circles, all right? No gaps at all. It's like a mathematical oddity. And so that's what I referred to, but it's a bit obscure. I don't know if they would have got that. They just nodded.
I explained flex defense initially to them because we knew we were going to be facing old school players that just stack up. And, they loved it. And it's kind of like, Masters, the more that you play, the more you start talking on the field, the more aware you are, because, you can save yourself from running around the place if you just switch. And so you kind of tend towards that kind of like more teamworky based defense. So it was kind of familiar to them, after the first day and a half, I was then like, well, are you interested in offense right now that you kind of see that angle? And they were all like, yeah, definitely. And so then I introduced Hex, and, we'd already built all those communications and able to work together nicely. And it worked really well for us. We won our quarterfinal with it and then finished third, got bronze medals that was the European Masters, neglected to mention. So that's the European.
They don't care, those European Masters. Weird thing happened in that tournament, actually. We made it to the 3v4, and a couple of players on my team really wanted medals. They hadn't had medals before, and getting the bronze medal was like a big deal. And I love having medals too, and so it was like, okay, big game coming up, and we had like a couple of hours, so I was like, what am I going to do? And I was like, I'm going to have a nap. And so I went to my tent and I like lay down for an hour, and I tried to visualize, right? And then I had a dream, I think, like a half dream kind of thing, where I visualized like this hammer coming in, like for like the winning point, and me jumping up and like catching it with 2 hands, and exactly how it felt, and what it looked like. And then it happened, right? Like then we come and warm up and play the game, and then for the winning point, I cut for the hammer, and the hammer comes in. And as I'm looking up, I'm like, I've already done this earlier today, like caught this disc for the winning point in this game, and so I just kind of knew what was going to happen. It is exactly as I imagined it. Just went up in 2 hands and caught the winning score. Everyone celebrated, and I was just like yay! That was really weird, by the way. I'll tell you about it later.
I guess I'm wondering how Flex is different than switching. I mean, switching is not a new concept, and like bracketing and things like that are not new. I guess I'm wondering, like in simplest terms, how it's different, and is there ever a time, when people come out of a poach set or something like that, like close to the end zone? Like, is that something that happens?
I didn't really understand that last bit of the question. Is there a time when people come out of a poach set near the end zone? So my response was a bit vague at the beginning.
In Flexagon defense.
Yeah, I mean, poach set is just like a concept, right? There are different words for all kinds of different things that we do on the field.
So like
Flex, like, is basically 1-to-1, right? The assumption is 1-to-1, or at least the way it kind of is now at the moment. But when the offense bunch together, then it's like, let's not do 1-to-1. Like, so it's like a dynamic reaction to the offense clustering. Then we surround them in a kind of dynamic, fluid way. And or if they cross over, run past each other, then that's when you should switch. It's got a bunch of different names. The concepts are just kind of like together in this whole package kind of thing of like, this is how it can all work together.
And it's important.
So just before he says it's important to have that package, I said briefly there, the way that Flex is now is that it's 1-to-1 with switching and surrounding. I used to teach Flex as like a 2-3-2 zone, but then because the offense we're facing against was never 2-3-2, then like the flexibility of the hexagon always had to be like, you know, into like a 3-4 or like or into like a mark, you know, a force with a dump mark and then surrounding the stack. And so it became less like, I still think that 2-3-2 zone is like, does apply in like a perfect strategy kind of way, but it's just not applicable to the offense we're facing, and it's far more applicable to actually go down with the mentality of 1-to-1, but surrounding a stack if you see it. Yeah, like further down the line in years and years and years, then when teams are playing Hex and their shape is bad, then Flex should be slightly better shape than the Hex and forcing the Hex to be in slightly worse shape. Right, so the offense kind of do a 2-3-2, and then the defense trying to do a 2-3-2, and then everyone's aware of actually where the ideal shape points are, you know. And so if the defense get there first and occupy that position or whatever, and then they're trying to force the offense to be away from that position, the further out of position the offense get, the more threat they have of cutting back towards that position, but also the worse shape they're in. So therefore the defense have to kind of get that to work for their advantage. But I don't talk about that very much because I think it's like a decade down the line. It's like I'm not sure that that's gonna. I think that's gonna go over the head of a lot of people, especially if they, you know, haven't really played Hex or Flex at all. You know, that's just like, what are you talking about? So yeah, like I think in time it'll be like you'll think of Flex more as a 2-3-2 zone with lots of switching of positions, right? Where if the offense managed to not cross over at all, then actually you have to stick 1-to-1 to them. But usually they're either going to be crossing over or surrounding, you know, like to an extent. So then, like, you know, if you can play that zone where you're like switching positions as often as you're sticking in your position as players go in and out, like that's going to be the ideal, I think. Finding that balance.
To have that package because once you're selling the Hex, you then also need to be selling the antidote. You know,
Yeah.
like as Americans who, you know, like the snake oil huckster salesman is like deep in our blood. You always, if you're going to have the like miracle elixir that you're selling, you also need the cure for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have this unstoppable offense. It's the hexagon, and it's going to destroy everything. But don't worry, I also have the solution. And for the low price of whatever you're costing to subscribe to Hive Ultimate,
Yeah, I like it.
Sell you the cure too.
That's it. It's how you get them. I think it would work the other way around though. I think Flex is like the poison.
Oh, interesting.
And then it's like, okay, and then what are people looking for? Hex always was kind of like the answer to the question nobody was asking.
The answer to the question nobody was asking. All right, that's your tagline. That's a good.
Yeah, maybe put that out front on the website.
That's probably the peak of the interview, I reckon. Getting that line in there, and the relevance of it, and like maybe they're like, you know, appreciating what they're saying about the antidote type thing, but then switching it up and being like, you know, well actually it's the other way around, because, you know, you don't need that. The offense being unstoppable is kind of like, you know, that's, I mean, one, it's like hard to like impossible to prove that, or and it's nonsense to kind of talk about it. And yeah, it just the whole analogy works better like the other way around. Yeah, I agree, Luke. You could go down the zone and surround if they stack up, but it might destroy the stack, and you don't really want to destroy the stack as Noah points out in offensive mistakes, episode 1. Yeah, it just made sense at the moment to go down 1-1 because we always had like 2-3-2, but then against 3-4, there'd always be a handler free, and then my focus then became like, look, you can't just leave people free, and it's like, yeah, but I'm a wing, and it's like, yeah, but one of the wings has to take a handler. So I just kind of got tied up in like constantly trying to persuade people to mark people, and it's like, okay, look, let's just start from the other angle, and it actually makes a lot more sense that way. You just have to get people switching a lot more.
I mean, I personally, and I think I've seen this.
Oh, and Hex is the answer to the question nobody was asking. What's the question? Yeah, that's the next thing to think about. Maybe that'll be what we talk a bit like the theme of the next series of live streams or something. Like further down the road, there's a lot of things to uncover and a lot of avenues to delve into when you start thinking in Hex versus Flex kind of terms. It's like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, isn't it? I've got quite a clear idea of what the question is, and people that are in Discord know what I think as well.
This too, in a very unscientific look at internet comment sections. I think people are more open to Flex defense because it's more easily understood for people that have played Ultimate, I think, than Hex, which I think people are pretty resistant to, and I am as well. Has that been your experience? Like, do you find people reach out to you and want to know about Flex and then like don't care at all about Hex or are uninterested?
I've had both. I've had some teams more interested in the offense, some more interested in the defense. But like, if the offense is working, then why change it? So the team I coached won nationals last year. Can you guess what offense we used? Vert stack,
Bird
no
stack.
dump. Yeah. No dump, vert stack.
If there was one,
Actually, they cut out a little bit there where I backed that up a little bit by saying, if the opposition are playing 1-1 defense, then there's no need to do anything else, because 1-1 defense means that the players stick to those players, right? So if you can manipulate the positioning of the defense to lump all the players together, whether it's in the middle or near the side, like if they're going to follow that rule to put themselves in bad positioning, then it's to your advantage. I mean, it's easy to get an advantage on offense, but it's especially easy when the defense don't adapt and don't have their own ideas about spacing. They're just putty in your hands to be manipulated. In which case, that's why vertical stack's so popular. Because teams just haven't developed like their own bracketing surrounding things beyond just like clam for one kind of thing. There's a lot of development that can be done there. And if teams aren't clamming for one, or even if they're clamming badly for one, or like if they're clamming badly for 3 or 4, then you might as well stack up. Like I said, Sussex did it. And then if you train Hex as well as being able to stack up, then when the stack breaks down, then you can just pass the disc around, and you're comfortable. Like being comfortable in a fluid, organic situation on offense is going to help you just like score points as soon as your plan A doesn't work. You got to plan for plan A not working, and yeah, training Hex is a really good fun way of doing that.
Coach in USAU. So we're gonna throw Canada in there. If there's one coach in USAU that you could have killed in a mob hit and you could take their status and place, who would it be and why? It's a simple question, Felix. I mean, okay, like, what's a team that that you think like in USAU like would really, really do well implementing the strategies?
Well, I guess it's tough to answer because, if I imagine a team that I want to coach and stuff, then normally that's a team that's got a coach that I like already.
Who you don't want to have murdered.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You were saying, if there was any coach in the US, and I was immediately thinking my favorite coaches, and then you're like, you could have killed. And I was like, oh, no.
I wish there was another way, but
this is the only way.
Yeah.
We have it's the tradition here. You have to, it's a king of the hill type thing. In order to become a coach of a team, you have to kill the coach who was there in the first place. It's like
It's like the Santa Claus when Tim Allen killed Santa.
right. You have to kill Santa to become Santa, which is
Well, I feel maybe this is the influence of The Godfather, but Mike Donardis is springing to mind.
Okay. So you want to murder? I'm sorry. We have to stop. We have to stop with that.
So I said Mike Donardis. I actually got an email from Mike Donardis earlier today where he where he starts quoting The Godfather. The scene with the fish in the bulletproof vest. That he's sleeping with the fishes, and it's like the beginning of the war, the gang war. So I think I've started a gang war with Ring of Fire, Mike Donardis.
Okay. You know what, Felix? I'm glad you brought up Mike Donardis, because you posted a very sensationally titled video recently. Felix loses it at Ring's defense. And it's like a 4-minute video about like Ring blowing a switch. So I guess I'm wondering.
Unforgivable travesty.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Unforgivable.
Right, so maybe Mike does deserve it. Maybe he should be whacked because Eric Taylor like missed an in-cut pickup or something like that.
I do feel like, I feel we've been tiptoeing around this, but Frank Huguenard probably has similar thoughts about what he could do.
That's what I was referring to.
I received a text recently that Frank was at Flyers tryouts this past weekend, just hanging out, observing.
Yeah, in a ghillie suit.
Right.
Frank's he's always had this kind of history with Mike, because I think they're in the same city, and he's always trying to persuade him to run motion offense, and Mike's like trying to take the useful bits from it, not giving Frank control over the team. Obviously, that doesn't work well with Frank. But there's some footage of Frank playing, or there maybe was footage now, of Frank playing at Poultry Days, perhaps, or like another tournament, where he went to the cameraman afterwards, and I think it might have been Alti Village Rob, and he went to him and was like, no, maybe it wasn't. No, I think it's someone else that he goes on about a lot. And he went to him and said, "Can I have that footage? That's really important to me." And the guy didn't give it to him. And he's just like, "No," like, and like, what the hell? Like, that's so bad. Imagine like trying to persuade people something for ages, and then playing well on the field and making something happen, and someone with the footage just being like, "No, I'm not going to give it to you." And that's the same as like people being told not to talk about Frank. It's just like, when you start acting weird, then that's you doing something wrong.
Like 200 yards away. Okay, well, Felix, I guess what I'm getting at is, can you talk about like some of the sensational media branding that you've put out? Because you do the full thumbnail thing. Like, you get people to consume Hex stuff because they are so intrigued.
I guess it's just a way of kind of getting my voice out. Like, the revelation in my mind kind of happened way back, like 2012, and all the way up to like 2015. I was trying my best to tell people. I thought people would be, fascinated and interested to hear it, but then there's so much hate that I was receiving back, and I realized that was kind of like getting the raw end of like a cycle that had been happening. And then
the cycle stops with me.
It's pretty depressing, really, because like, you can't say these things, or like whenever you say them, you get like shut down. And one of my biggest fears is kind of just not being understood.
I don't know if that's true. Like, I think everyone has that fear, right? Maybe it is, but it's not like I walk around every day being like, "Oh, my biggest fear, misunderstood." I did get super depressed though. I think it was like after 2015, because 2015 had the GB thing, and so all my focus was on that. And it was like, if we win Worlds with this, and it's changing the world of Ultimate forever. And we had a good chance to. We took the first half against the team that did win that division. And we came fifth, and we almost came seventh. But yeah, we came fifth, and it was a good result. It was a great result, and we built an amazing team, and all those players developed so much, and they've gone on to like coach other teams, and that's why GB women were playing Hex, is because one of the players on that team loved it. And I don't know. After that, though, I just fell into depression, because it was just like, I don't know, like, I didn't have a voice. I couldn't tell people. When I did try and tell people, then no one wanted to hear it. And the GB result was good, but like the footage that we got wasn't as nice as I wanted. I couldn't really show anything with the footage, and that whole trip was like over. So it just felt like I just had nothing, and it's difficult when you're self-employed as well, like when Frisbee is your life and you don't have that 9 to 5 to kind of keep you busy. It's very easy to kind of slip. And that's what happened to me in 2015. And so I was at a pretty low point when then I started making the USA Japan videos. And then the response to that just kind of like, I don't know, I was kind of numb in a way. And that massive response was kind of happening, and I was just kind of like staring at it and like feeling a bit disconnected from it. But that was the beginning. Like not even the USA Japan video. It was actually working, filming Worlds. Being invited to film Worlds. That was almost like a rude. Don't burn the laptop. But yeah, being invited to like film Worlds with LTTV or with the Wooftuff crew. That was the real beginning. And having those connections, building those connections, encouraged me to make the videos and stuff. But yeah, 2015 was like super low point where like I tried to explain Hex and Flex, and it had just gone like, and like the GB team was great, but yeah, it didn't carry on to somewhere, like so suddenly I wasn't busy anymore, and yeah, anyway.
And so then 2016 came around, and I was like, hey, I should just make a video where I analyze like Japan versus USA. I should just start doing that so people can kind of see that I can talk about other stuff as well, because I'm getting a bit monotone going on about Hex and Flex all the time. So then I started making other videos, and they got really good responses. So then I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll kind of do both. And then then the end product is crazy thumbnails where I'm holding my head in my hands and looks like I'm about to tear my hair out.
I think that's sweet. Yeah. Cause, as someone who has like tried to make YouTube thumbnails, which there does seem to be an art to it.
When was he trying to make YouTube? I should have asked him, like, what was he making thumbnails?
It's for? Like, you go into Canva and like really fuck with the contrast and the brightness of the thing you want to make that font really pop. That's cool, man. I was like, man, he knows how to do it. I've watched 10 YouTube videos trying to figure out how to do this.
Yeah, it's a lot of practice. I mean, I've been producing videos since like 2006. I think I noticed nobody was filming any nationals and stuff, and I was like a big Ulti Village fan. I'd get the DVDs shipped over every time.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, and so then I was like, well, why is no one filming UK nationals? Why is no one filming the first European clubs? So I bought a little video camera and started doing it and making DVDs and stuff. So I've kind of then had to learn all the skills that came with that, including how to use a video editor, how to do artwork, how to produce DVDs, lots of different stuff, so that I could actually get the footage from my camera to the community.
But like Mike Palmer is the guy that came over and just revolutionized the way that we film Ultimate in Europe. He put a crew together and put equipment together. He built equipment, built those pole cams. So for like a budget, you could operate a camera up high from low down. And he just packed it all up into suitcases and hired a van and drove around. Legend.
Was that also in the Felix Ultimate brand? Like, what were you going by back then?
That was Push Pass Productions.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that. I remember watching some of those. Did you post that stuff on RSD as well?
Yeah, I covered like all the UK European top tournaments up until about like 2013, 14.
Okay. How's your push pass?
I could pull at one point indoors with a push pass. So one ends into the other indoors, which is like a basketball court.
So that's like,
far.
What, 40 yards, 35 yards?
Maybe once or twice I did that.
Yeah, about that. Yeah, that was my peak though. And that was like on a good day,
Real quick, so is this your full-time gig now? You're full-time Ultimate employed?
Yeah, it's been that way for about 10 years.
That's incredible. That puts you in a very, very rarefied list of people, I think, who are able to do that. So
yeah,
you immediately have my respect for that, Felix. Yeah. And
thanks. Yeah,
I wouldn't care if your bit was based around something insane. Like if you were like only into beach ultimate, which I hate, and I'm going to hate more because it's going to be in the Olympics, I think, as the only version of ultimate. I would respect you because you were about something.
Thank you.
It's a terrible answer. I think I should have brought him up on that and be like, if I'm just peddling nonsense, you should bring me up on it, you know? Like, you should just not allow it. Because I think they did just kind of allow it. I think they did just like not agree, but then not keep the conversation going. You know, and if they don't agree, then I think they that's what they're there for, is to question me about it. Like, but I'm not going to tell them how to do their job, because they're making an enjoyable experience for me, and an easy listening thing for the viewers and stuff. But I should have brought him up on that and be like, wait a minute, like, one, Beach is amazing, and two, if I'm talking crap, then you got to tell me, you know, like, I'm not infallible, and you know, need sanity checks and stuff. Plus, it's a conversation, isn't it? Something I wanted to say earlier on, regarding the question, I mean, maybe I could have gone straight into this, but yeah, regarding the question about like learning throw, catch, run, or like strategy, fundamentally, I believe that coaches should trust their players more. Like, there's a lot of trust that is just kind of like not existing and taken away. And when teaching offense, it shouldn't be about like presenting a complicated answer, right? You got this problem, this challenge, here's a complicated answer for how we can like have a solution, score a point. Instead of that, and trying to teach that to people, actually like equipping players with tools, right? Like complex tools, or like tools to solve a complex problem, right? You got a complex problem because defense isn't like super simple, and then equip the players with the tools they need to solve that problem, rather than getting to memorize a complicated answer. Kind of a subtle difference between being complicated and attacking a complex problem.
You're welcome. You're very welcome, Felix.
Cringe moment.
Here, is there anything else you want to get off your chest? You know, I think part of the reason that you're making your appearance, not just because it's, you know, lovely to have you on the show and it's great to talk to you. You know, we did potentially slander the Hex, maybe you personally, maybe some of your friends and accomplices. Is there anything you wanted to get off your chest that you felt like we haven't covered so far?
He's trying to set me up to like intro Jason's video. I think he's trying to set me up to like talk about whatever I want to talk about and then intro it. But I didn't. Again, half answered. I didn't intro it.
To set the record straight for any misunderstandings we may have communicated to the listening public when we talked about the Hex a couple shows ago.
I think it was clear that you did enough research to kind of understand what it was about. So I thought you kind of represented it really well, and the arguments against it and stuff, I think you were very like self-aware when you were putting those across as well. And I don't think I need to kind of like talk anything about the things you said about against it. You know, there's been plenty of chat about that. But in the description of the podcast, you did refer to me as a European hipster. But if you had seen me on the field at all in the last 10 years, 20 years, then if you see my hairstyle, then
you're punk
you
rock.
realize that I'm a punk. Yeah.
Yeah. How long were you rocking that mohawk, Felix?
I first got it in 2000, about a month after I joined the Frisbee team.
Fuck yeah. And then, wait, you kept it the whole time? Like, how long? Because I'm in some of your early videos, I was like, whoa, check this guy out.
Yeah, I had it up until, I don't know, like 2019. It's just kind of like gradually come out with a bit of like lockdown kind of hair type stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, just one length of clipper just over the whole head kind of thing. But I've had it, you know, up until very recently, and when things open up, you know, I could quite easily see myself going back out. I've had it for so many years, you know, that's almost like 20 years with the occasional few months for like my brother's wedding and stuff where I wouldn't have it. So then now that when I look in the mirror, it does look a bit weird if I don't have it.
Did your brother beat you up about it? Was he like, Felix, come on, man? Can you?
No, he was actually cool. He said, well, just dye it purple because that's what the bridesmaids are wearing. I was like, okay.
Oh, sweet.
That doesn't make sense, right? Because I started by saying my brother, like, I lost it when my brother had a wedding, and then I was like, yeah, my brother told me to dye it purple. It didn't make any sense, but I got two brothers. That's why the first one that came to mind was like, that was the first time I had to lose my mohawk, and then the second one was like, oh, this is actually funnier and cooler, but I didn't explain that at all.
Hell yeah. Well, thanks for being so kind and all of your generous praise there. I do think there's another correction that we need to make.
So before we go into Jason's clip, a couple of other things I kind of like had lined up to say. Like when we started talking about Frank, I kind of wanted to like, you know, address a bit of that, like the similarities and differences between the offenses. You know, again, maybe too much detail. But like the idea is that like Frank spaffs the disc around, right, in the middle of a circle. Right? He gets everyone to gather around, and then he has fun like passing the disc around in the middle, bouncing off people as like posts. But Hex kind of, it's just about spreading people equally, so then anyone has the opportunity to spaff the disc around in the middle and have a bit of fun in there. So it's like, instead of it being like a self-centered offense, it is kind of a distributed offense. Even though like the actual end product, like what is actually happening, is probably relatively similar. It's far more distributed in Hex, and it actually works better when like people are encouraged to kind of get involved and stuff. And I'm not saying that Frank was saying nobody else can be involved, it's just me in the middle. But that definitely kind of came across, and that probably started a lot of the unhappiness with adopting it. They're saying they respect me for being a lifer, for being passionate about it and caring about it, but they never asked like why. Like, why am I trying to change that? Why am I so keen on that? And I was reminded actually of, it was like 2010, and we'd gone to nationals at Sussex University, men's and women's teams, and the way that I coach, I wasn't needed on the sideline. I'd kind of empowered the players, and so I had my camera and I was actually filming, and then it came to the finals, and I was also involved in writing the schedule. So I'd scheduled the finals, the men's final, to have it, have the back of the end zone here where I'd be stood, and the women's final to have the back of the end zone basically in the same place, just at right angles, so that I could finish filming one and film the other. And Sussex were playing in the men's final, so I was filming them. I filmed them win the final, filmed them celebrate and stuff for like a little while, and you can hear the crack in my voice as I'm like saying the score and stuff. And then I turn the camera around and catch the end of the women's game, which is also the Sussex team, right? The Sussex women's team. And then, like a minute later, they pass it down the field and they score in the end zone next to the camera. And then all of the guys who have just been celebrating then run over. And then the whole club is like celebrating after just winning the double. And you can see me like filming it for like a little bit, the camera shaking a little bit as I get emotional. And then I turn it off and I go and run in and celebrate with everybody. And then the next year, we introduced Hex, and we came first and second at regionals that year that we then introduced Hex, like the next year, first and second. Like the guy writing a preview said, Distort is Imperial, we probably make it to the final, probably beat Sussex. Like even though Sussex is always strong, Imperial we think will get the better of them. And Imperial faced Sussex 2 in the semi-final and lost to them. So then it was Sussex 1 versus Sussex 2 in the final. And that kind of just shows that Hex is really, really good for beginners. Obviously having like a super strong first team brings up the rest of your players anyway. But yeah, having all those players be like super happy winning those tournaments and stuff. And but also then me knowing from the previous year what lies ahead for them in Clapham and in GB, and how that's not fun, like nowhere near as fun as what they're doing now. Like it didn't marry up for me, so I had to do something about it, and I was like, if that's the pinnacle, like I'm not happy. There's got to be a better way. So I almost left the sport.
Audio message sent into us by, I think someone Jason, I think was his name. Is that right? Who wanted to set the record straight. We had talked about that bragging about beating Brown B maybe isn't the most stellar mark on the CV of Hex, but Jason wanted to set the record straight here. So we're going to play out with that clip, because this show's always been about truth, getting the facts right. At its core, that's what this program's really always been about. So we're going to play out with that. But Felix, thanks so much for coming on the program. And, maybe we don't see eye to eye on the Hex versus Vert stack or, whatever's going on, but you are very clearly an ultimate lifer. You very clearly care so much about this in a way that I cannot help but respect. So absolute best of luck with everything going on with Hive Ultimate. So go check out Hive. Do you have
You sort of don't see eye to eye on that Vert stack versus Hex thing, but that wasn't part of the conversation, and maybe that's good. Maybe you wanted to avoid it being confrontational, or thought I might get overly defensive, kind of like Frank would do, so he just steered clear of that, perhaps. and you just want to see how I react to other quite good questions, which I only half answered.
But anything you want people to follow, subscribe, get your plugs in.
Just join the Hive, hiveultimate.com.
Join the Hive, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. It's fun, it's fun. Just give it a try. You might like it.
Buzz. Let's go.
Buzz. I should probably point people towards the YouTube. Like, it's way more easier to get into than actually hiveultimate.com.
All right, that's Felix Shardlow. Stick around. We got more coming up next on Cinder Fields.
What do you think? Got Jason's bit now.
Hey fellas, it's Jason from that Reddit thread about Hex offense. A few weeks ago, you guys accused me of bragging that I beat Brown's B team using Hex offense. Classic Hex critics talking at length about something you just don't understand. Wait until God Emperor Frank hears about this. First of all, I resent the implication that beating Brown B isn't an accomplishment. Stevens is a D3 team from the Metro East, the worst college Ultimate region in the history of Ultimate, as Pat should know well. And Brown isn't just any B team. They are tied for the second best B team in the whole Southern New England Developmental Conference. That's nothing to sneeze at. Second of all, if you're going to talk about results, at least get your facts straight. We lost that game, 13-9. We could never beat a team as illustrious, as vaunted as Brown B, no matter how perfect our strategy was.
Well, there he was, Pat. Felix Shardlow, and also at the end there, Jason, the coach of Stevens Tech.
Jason Thompson,
CJ. Was
CJ.
unable to use the magic potion that is the Hex offense to beat Brown B. We got it wrong, as we so often do on this program. We'll never give someone credit for something as ridiculous as maybe beating Brown B ever again.
And to be clear here, when we were making fun of the boasting about beating Brown B, or again, in this case, not actually beating Brown B, failing to beat Brown B,
right?
We weren't saying that, no one should feel good about beating a B team. Because if you go to Slapdick State and you're not going to make regionals, but beating Brown B is like a big deal for you guys, big accomplishment, hell yeah. That's awesome. That's great. Whatever the goals you've got are, whatever is like just above your head that you're reaching for, whenever you can beat a team, particularly, a team like Brown B, that makes you feel good, like that's great. What is different is saying, hey, elite teams should be playing this. Elite teams should be using this transformative elixir of a system because we almost beat Brown B with it. I find that a little...
But it's kind of like the natural progression, right? Like when something like this comes in, it's not going to be tried by the elite teams, right? It's like not immediately. It'll be tried like it's the coaches. Yeah, you have an experienced coach. Like the chances that they're going to introduce a relatively untested offense to a high level team, that would be like irresponsible, right? Depending on, obviously, I mean, I did it obviously, but like, so it's naturally going to come into the lower teams first, yeah, and then the higher level coaches will then talk to the coaches of those lower level teams. The higher level coaches will coach lower level teams and probably introduce it with their lower level teams. Like there's a few examples of that. One of the ones I can say is St. Andrews. Benji Hayward's coach he introduced it to his second team, and they had great results. They beat Edinburgh's first team with it. But yeah, you're right, Luke. That's not isn't the point that we're making. Although I don't remember the Reddit thread exactly. But yeah, so the experienced coaches want to get experience with Hex, but they're not going to do it with their elite team, right? They're going to do it with like a college B team, and then they'll get experience with like how to adapt it, because you can train it, but then when you're in a game and you have to make an adjustment, if you don't know the offense that well, if you don't know how the adjustments work, these like nuances that come with experience, then you're putting yourself in a volatile situation, in a dangerous situation as a coach. But that experience comes over time, because people will coach higher and higher level teams with it, and then they'll gain that experience, and then the tweaks will become more obvious, and then the experienced coaches will talk to their assistant coaches that have coached it in other teams. The experienced coaches will coach it in college teams or whatever before then coaching it in club. And then you'll get the occasional team like Singapore who will just like immediately just go in and be like, yeah, we like the direction you're going, we like what you're talking about, let's do it. So yeah, it's like a gradual thing. But yeah, the point isn't because it's beating Brown B or not beating Brown B in this case that elite teams should play it. Yeah, it's very natural progression. You know, the way that we've seen it kind of like seep in like and spike up in different places is kind of a very natural way that it's going to evolve and integrate into the sport, into the community, really.
A little less compelling then. But like if you want to go out here and just say like, hey, we're a shitty D3 team and we beat Brown B, fuck them. You know,
Right.
their parents all bribed the school to get them in. They're a bunch of ivory tower assholes. Like, great. Yes. Love it.
Right. But I mean, you also need to like rep that in your comments and shared experiences of the Hex. Like it can't be like, yeah, we rolled, because the impression that I got reading Jason's comments, I think like yourself, Pat, were that they played Hex to a T and rolled Brown B. But really what happened was Brown B won the game, and then those kids went home and sold off some of their Halliburton stock that they were gifted at their birth, and then bought game stock. So
they also won the war. They won the game and the war.
We're arguing that Hex is good actually, and the elite teams should visit hiveultimate.com. Yeah, and if you look at the list of patrons, then you know there's not an insignificant number of high level coaches who are paying attention. Because I mean that's why they're high level. That's why they're the best coaches, is because they're open minded and they can see value in ideas that are outside the box. After the interview was finished, we continued chatting for a while. Here's an excerpt from that where I explain my motivation and my passion behind pushing Hex and Flex so much. Clapham got in touch with me before that season started, and I was like, yeah, you know, let's do something. Let's work together. Like, I'm this coach with these new ideas in the same country as you. I did play for Clapham as well a few years ago, and I was like, you know, let's do it. Let's make some stuff happen. And then they were like, okay. And then like a few weeks, and I was like, hello, should we do something? And then they're like, I talked to the coaches. The coaches have already decided what their offense and defense are, so there's not really a space for you. And I'm like, okay. And then, you know, they went ahead and tried the same damn offense and the same damn defense they've been doing for 20 years. It's been working for them for 20 years. But yeah, it was unsurprising to me that they got usurped. It was one of the kind of stories that I had lined up to potentially tell you guys was when I graduated into, well, like when I'd been playing for many years and I was kind of on the verge of quitting because I was a bit fed up. And then I decided to like join GB, right? Try out for GB to see how far I'd come. Got into the team. Then I joined Clapham at the same time because, you know, my GB teammates were there. And one of the first trainings, Clapham, like, right, gather around. Now, if you know, as we know, if you don't innovate, then you stagnate. All right. So here we go.
It rhymes. So
must be true. So here we go. We got this. Gather around. Like, this is the thing. Okay. So we set up in horizontal, and now this guy cuts over here, and this guy cuts over here, and I was just like, oh my god, like
it's like a diamond.
This is really the pinnacle of ultimate in this country and in Europe. Like, and yeah, like it threw me into depression. I think like that year was like super hard.
So they were winning because they were just bigger, faster, stronger. Pretty much, or
yeah, they just play that they bring in all the best players from UK, right? Like I coached loads of people who, when they graduate the university that I coach at, then go to Clapham, right, rather than staying and playing for Brighton, because you can get from door to door, from like any house in Brighton to training in Clapham in about like an hour, right, just over an hour, right. Which is probably like the average amount of time people travel for training just to their local club in the US, right?
Not here. Not where I'm at, but Pat probably.
Yeah.
Right.
I definitely know tons of players who commute, 40 minutes to an hour every
Right.
practice.
Yeah. So it's like it's no problem, and so there are players who, they want to be the best, they want to win the medals, and even though Brighton are like in the top 5 for all those years, Clapham were consistently number 1. So then all of our best players would go to Clapham, and then those best players would then get in touch with the newer players that are coming through, and so then this like chain, the side chain would just go through the university that I coached to Clapham, and then Brighton is like, struggling to break into the semi-finals and into the final, and just always having the talent sucked away by Clapham. And you can't really blame anyone in this situation. It's just something that's happened. It just is the way it is. But it does mean that like Clapham gets stronger and stronger. I get frustrated because they're not, actually like doing anything with that strength. Some players that I coach, will go to Clapham and have a great time because they win all the medals, and they're happy. A lot of players that I coach would actually go to like Great Britain teams and go to other teams and be really sad. Like they'd come back and be like, Felix, like, they're playing Ultimate in this like really disciplined way. I can't just do what I want. Like none of them understand space. Like I look at my teammates, nothing happens. Like, and what could I say to them? It's just like, I'm sorry you had that experience. Like I try my best to change it. Like one of the women I coached went to played on the Great Britain World Games team. And she came back and we went to a fun tournament, and then that Saturday night she was like crying to me, like she had such a terrible experience there, just in terms of not getting the disc when she's on the field, it being just like a messed up like macho strategy of just cut hard and throw deep, and like all the joy taken out of the game. And that was the pinnacle, and I know how those players feel because I've been there myself when I did the Clapham and GB thing, and so like. Hex and Flex is something that I just needed to do. I needed to like try and make the game more fun, and make it like a way that I could actually get behind and support. So that then, when players would leave me, I wouldn't feel like I was just sending them off to have their dreams ruined.
Damn.
Okay, that brings us to the end of this hour-long video. I'm kind of out of my element in that conversation style, and I don't think I answered the questions very well, which is why I felt I needed to make this kind of follow-up video. But hopefully people who watched the interview and the other episode, maybe their opinions were changed for the better. Maybe it was changed from thinking that it was all about offense and this scary offense coming along that says it's going to take over everything, and instead, turns their attention more to actually like, let's mix things up on defense and challenge existing offenses more, and then see where that leads. And hopefully I got across the fact that it's fun and it's easy and it's good for beginners, because those are some of the biggest and most damaging misconceptions. But yeah, in the interview style, I'm totally out of my element. I'm like a strategist and a coach. Those guys are like professional interviewers, and I've learnt the skills of production and such. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you again soon.